And we're live.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Teresa Friedlander, and this is the Athens in Motion Commission's Subcommittee for Education and Communications. And we are meeting today to discuss our communication and outreach strategy that we're developing with the help of Tool Design Group. And if Daniel will put the agenda up for us all to look at, that would be super helpful because I can't do it.
I did not have that ready.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway,
Um,
sorry, Daniel. Didn't mean to put you on the spot there.
that's all right.
It's this computer that I use for my video feed. It has very limited capacity. You know, it doesn't. It's a MacBook Air, and it doesn't allow you to put a lot of useful software on it.
Gotcha.
I inherited it from my mother-in-law, and she didn't do much with it.
All right. Well, while I'm doing that, if you could forward the invite to Carly. I don't think she received it.
Okay,
So
so
she
is
just
that
asked if
going to be in the calendar, or is that an email?
I'm not sure how it looks on yours.
All right. Let's see.
Okay. I'm not sure where the agenda is in the folder.
Well, I found the agenda online, so you did put it in there.
Yeah, okay, I guess it's uploaded. I could probably go through the agenda center.
So, all right, I'm going to, let's see. I'm going to copy this link and copy link. I'm going to send it to Carly.
Okay.
Okay, I just
Okay.
sent her the meeting link. So, oh, there she is. Hi, Carly. Yay.
Hi guys, I'm so sorry. This just was not on my radar at all, and I didn't have it. Wasn't on my calendar. So
Oh,
sorry.
weird.
That's okay.
No worries.
We're all a little bit behind the 8 ball these days. So,
Yeah. Teresa, could you put the link to the agenda in here? I can't, I see the side of the website that is more for the
okay.
uploading of things. It doesn't let me just open to look at it.
Okay. So, Daniel, do you want me to text it to you?
Actually, wait, okay, I found the original one that I uploaded. So 15 minutes later. Okay. Going to share that now.
Yay.
Okay, and here's the agenda.
Okay.
Sarah, you may notice that we're using one of the templates.
Yeah, I just grabbed whatever Lauren had and I just ripped it off. Okay, so yeah, welcome everyone. I think we've used up our 5 minutes fooling around here with technology. Nice to see everyone. So why don't we get started with the meat of the meeting, the communications and outreach strategy. So I believe we're going to have Sarah and Henry handling that part. Take it away.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. And it looks like you all can see it. Great. Okay, so part 2 to this bicycle and pedestrian communication strategy. Part 1 was focused on branding and marketing, and this part is focused on the actual outreach and communication strategy, which we'll go into more detail. This was just going to be a welcome and introduction slide, although I think everybody remembers each other, and we've kind of gathered everybody's names from the slow trickle in. Thank you, Carly, for being available at a drop of a hat to join this call. That's very impressive. And just, the photos here, just a reminder that the goal is to have people be engaged and then to be able to have more people out and about walking and biking, feeling safe and supported. I'm going to pass it off to Henry to go over the recap.
Sure. Great to be here. And you can go to the next one. It's hard to believe that the meeting when we were talking about the branding was all the way back in February. So it's been a little while. And so wanted to kind of talk about some of the bigger things that we were thinking about after that meeting. But you guys shared a lot of the great graphics that you're already using for communications and outreach, and really shared some excitement for a unified language going forward of having the Athens in Motion plan, having stuff through the city, having the T-Splosh and all these different parts, and building a real unified language around those. You can go to the next slide, Sarah. One of the big things that we took away from that was sort of a lack of awareness about the AIMC's purpose and influence, and really wanted to think about getting the message out about Athens in Motion and saying, hey, we're here, these are the things we're working on, these are the big things that we're trying to accomplish, and really take that home to the people who are seeing that as well, to be able to say, like, here's why that matters to me. This isn't just a project that happened to happen on my street. Here's what's actually in it for me. And so really personalizing that information as well. You can go to the next one. Another big thing we heard was an interest in kind of tying in messages around safety and Vision Zero. And we know there's like some kind of maybe now dated traditional approaches that maybe, focused on often around enforcement and kind of very standard educational approaches, but really moving towards kind of new ways of thinking about presenting those messages and focusing on kind of these new E's that we talk a lot about at Tool of ethics and equity and empathy, and how to incorporate those into our safety messaging as well. And then kind of our third big takeaway here was that this was a great opportunity to share the great work that the commission is doing, and really wanted to heard a lot about social media and the excitement of kind of sharing that out with folks. And then moving towards, I think this was kind of straight from one of you that we heard about looking at templates, timing, and what's tried and true. And we really hung on to that because I think that's just a great description, and really moving towards deliverables that we could use for these templates. What's the timing of the calendar throughout the year? And then what are some kind of tried and true tricks and checklists that can make sure that messages are being able to be communicated clearly and effectively? Can go to the next one. Yeah, and these are the templates. You just saw it on the agenda, but we worked since February on kind of putting some of these together, and we really tried to use and leverage the most like recognizable and best parts of the Athens in Motion plan and some of those colors, but also kind of bringing in some unique fonts and colors that would give kind of a unique identity to the AIMC. And so we spent some time thinking about a logo as well, and I heard that there's going to be a local firm that's going to be able to help you all with that, which is super exciting. We're all for that. So yeah, this is an example of kind of what those templates could look like, and really excited about kind of where those could keep going. You can keep going to the next slide. But yeah, this really leads us to our next phase. And now that we kind of have the what in the templates, we can now really move into the how and the when. So when we think about this next phase of the communications outreach strategy, we're going to just share a few big goals for this. And the first is that this is going to be a strategy to guide messages related to bicycle and pedestrian events projects. Pretty straightforward, but the emphasis there really is on it being a strategy, and really wanting it to be a game plan, more than just do this right now today, but really an opportunity going forward. You can go to the next bullet. Yeah, a big part of that is also going to be thinking about our target audience, and that's something that we want to hear from you all as well. But really thinking about who the people are that these messages are going to be going out to, and what are the very kind of specific places that they might be or activities they might be doing when we want them to hear those messages, and the specific maybe changes that we want based on them hearing those. And then we also want to tie that into scheduling, thinking, on a calendar year, what can we think about far ahead so that we have a game plan for going forward. And then, like I mentioned before, these kinds of rules of thumb for coordinating with others. What's already going on a regular basis that we can tag into, and how can all those things kind of fit into a schedule going forward into the next year. I think we've got another bullet here as well. Yeah, I think mentioned this a little bit earlier, but our goal in being here is really to provide a framework, and we want this to be something that maybe doesn't tell you exactly what to do, but tells you how to do what you want to do best going forward. And so our goal was to really incorporate the branding and the marketing templates into something that can really be like a toolbox going forward, because the specific messages and the specific projects and all of those things, those are going to change down the road. But a framework can kind of really give you, a foundation so that when things do change in the future, this plan can still be useful for those changes as well. Can go to the next one. So this is something that we really wanted to hear from you all about who the target audience is. And just to kind of share briefly, I think the target audience for any messaging, it could be very broad of just like, we want everyone to hear this, or it could be very kind of data driven and specific. And we've seen some communities that look specifically at crash data and say, hey, we know this demographic is specifically getting into these types of crashes on these corridors, and they're our target audience for this specific message. And it may be kind of geographically, if this neighborhood or this corridor. So all of those things can kind of play into who your target audience might be. But that will all really, really be crucial for kind of how we craft our message, and then also how we measure success at the end of, did we reach that target audience? Did they hear what we had to say? But I would love to hear from any of you and all of you, since we've got kind of a small crew here, that anyone could just speak up of who maybe you feel like the target audience is for this overall, or maybe for a specific message that you think could reach a target audience.
Are you ready to have that discussion right now?
Yes, thank you for asking. Yes, we are ready.
Okay.
And we'll be taking notes as well.
All right. Well, I've given some thought to this over the years I've been involved in this, and I hope that my fellow commissioners and others will jump in too. But I mean, we've got several different types of audiences, and we have different situations. So really, it's kind of a spectrum. But like a first type of audience would be drivers. Okay, we want them to drive the speed limit. We want them to yield to bicycles and stop for pedestrians. We want them to watch out, to be aware, that sort of thing. So, you have kind of physical media, in the form of whatever road signs or billboards or whatever we might devise. You could have things like the police doing random stops, but not issuing tickets, just saying, hey, dude, you were going too fast here. Or you made that right turn without looking and you could have killed a pedestrian, that sort of thing. And we also have social media, and we can do public service announcements and things like that. Another audience is pedestrians. How do we raise awareness on the part of pedestrians, to like look up from texting when they're about to cross the street, and to use a crosswalk if one is available, how to be visible, etc., things like that. Then we have the bicyclists. Bicyclists should be obeying the traffic laws if they're riding in the road. Theoretically, they're not supposed to ride on the sidewalks, but because the roads are not safe, a lot of bicyclists ride on sidewalks. We'd like people to wear helmets. We'd like bicyclists to also yield to pedestrians.
So Teresa,
yeah,
this is all fantastic information, and I think if we can focus on just the audience and not the actual message for right now, I think that would be helpful, because we will be talking about like kind of the message and the goals of the messaging.
Okay, so you got drivers, pedestrians, bicyclists, You've got the mayor and commission, and then you just got the sort of general public, you know, people that may say, why are they doing all these weird things on Hancock? You know,
I would add in transit users,
yeah.
and in terms of general public, we've got kind of 3 groups, I would say, and I might add more as I talk them through. So you've got game day visitors that come to Athens once or 6 times a year, and they are there for one specific reason. You've got local visitors, so surrounding counties, who they consider themselves Athenians because they live within a 20-minute drive, but they might not live within the county. And then I would say we're likely also kind of, but they're more based in rural areas, and then so maybe more used to rural type driving situations, or biking, that kind of thing. And then you've got the residents of Athens. But beyond that, I guess, while I was saying it, you've also got a fresh batch of students every year that are also fresh drivers. So if they got their license at 16, and they're coming to Athens, they've only been driving for maybe a year and a half to 2 years. And they may have been driving in a place that doesn't have the same look of infrastructure. So it's kind of, and I think based on the timing, it's helpful to have that kind of strategy of like, when the new students are coming in, this is the type of messaging that we're sending out. You know, how do you educate your city to understand your traffic when you get 40,000 new, or maybe not new, but we'll say 10,000 new like people a year, and the people who've been here for 4 years are now leaving, and so there's just that turnover that's hard to work with.
Yep. Yeah.
And
Randy?
there is a grant for UGA that they are working on to do that type of education. So some sort of within the strategy, I think it'd be helpful to find a way to coordinate that with UGA's program, the Watch for Dogs campaign, maybe. I'm not sure.
If that's accurate, that's good to hear. I know that we had the opportunity last year to present bicycle-friendly driver training to some freshmen, and they were very new to driving, especially here in Athens. Some of them didn't even have a car, but that turnover is it's always there for sure.
Yeah, and I think too, you have, I mean, to step back and look at it real broadly, I mean, you have people that drive who will never ride a bicycle. Occasionally they'll be a pedestrian. They have to walk when they're in town, of course. You have actually a pretty good, according to the Athens in Motion, the original plan, pretty good portion of people that are either interested in cycling, do cycle, and then of course all of us are pedestrians at one time or another. And I think it's understanding those groups and how do we get the message to them, the points that you were making early on, Therese, that to get them just to understand there are these different modes of transportation, and each one of them has its own inherent uses and dangers, and how do we communicate that?
Carly, did you have anything to add?
I think the challenge with this question is that it depends on the message of the day, right? So if we are, if we're talking about bicycle safety or crosswalk safety, or, if we're promoting a new segment along a busy corridor, our audience changes every single time. So I think that's my challenge with this question. Is like at any give, like at our audience is our user group, but also people who we want to be in our user group. So it depends on the message.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. So that's not a very good answer because it's just everybody all at different times.
That's
But I do think it's helpful to
challenge
think
here.
about. with messaging who is our target audience. But I think asking who our target audience is before the message is hard for me. But I'm glad we're thinking about it.
Oh, that's a great point. I think every message that goes out, you'll have to think about who the target audience is and how it affects different target audiences, and how one person hears it might be totally different than how another group hears it. You know, you're never going to have it to just one type of person. And so I think that's really helpful to think like, oh, a student might be reading this who hasn't been driving that long, and also a very experienced cyclist might be reading this. And so, yeah, there's a lot of like, think maybe Tracy mentioned it as a spectrum, that there's a lot of overlap in that, and people are moving in and out of different audiences throughout their day even.
Well,
Yeah.
I
Just
think a challenge too is that, we have to be able to make these messages very clear and very fast. People aren't going to sit and read a user manual about this stuff. They're not going to like read a page of text or a big paragraph of text on their iPhone. Just not going to do it. So a lot of it has, is down to, the creativity that we use to get these ideas across.
exactly. And actually, Teresa, that is a great segue into the next portion. So we're going to be talking a little bit about best practices here. And we will definitely circle back to target audience towards the end of this. So here's some tried and true tenets of messaging and engagement. So you want to focus a handful of goals. So we're going to be talking about what your goals are for the messaging. But if you can really have just a handful of goals, it's going to help to be able to evaluate your actions later on, and it'll also um, help create something that's at least customized to who you're trying to talk to, or the content that you're talking about, so it doesn't just feel like a beige message that doesn't stick in anybody's mind. So easy to understand, clear, succinct. You actually want to have a broad audience. So I know we're talking about the target audience. It's not just one. You definitely want to have your messaging to speak to all modes and not singling out a single mode. And then um, multiple different types of mediums. There's no silver bullet. Out of home messaging is key, and that's saying that the closer that you can engage with somebody as they are um, doing that thing you were trying to influence, the better you're going to have a chance at influencing that behavior. So, a TV spot when somebody's at home trying to tell them about how to respond to pedestrians in a crosswalk, not as effective as something that's actually out side of the house when somebody is a motorist, or maybe they're a pedestrian and they see it. So thinking about where that messaging takes place, having the schedule of messages be scaled to the type of activity, and then again making sure that there's some way to evaluate this, and that you are using data to be smart about the money that you spend, the way that you schedule messages, looking back at what has worked and what hasn't. So some examples, these are safety related messages, which we showed before, but they are also targeted messages. So if you were to take safety aside, um, you know, the one on the left is for a community in Wyoming, and it says, "This ain't your first rodeo, you know what to do." And so this is showing, that the content is really geared toward the local culture. And I think that's key to get people to understand. And then the second one is it's talking about, people looking at pet videos on their phone, and, it keeps it's got data on the side. It says 1.6 million crashes each year occur because people are on their phones. So this is a good balance of having the data, but also having kind of a lighthearted message. And it's communicating to people in a way that is referencing the act, that you want to change. Um, So here's some more targeted messaging. And this is about safe routes to school. And this is all different mediums. So you've got a handout that you can send home with kids. You've got flyers, yard signs that you can post in the actual like physical space where you're trying to have people slow down. So making sure that if you're going to go out and have a message, that it's not just a standalone floating message, that it's actually part of like a whole comprehensive campaign. And then, there's a lot of different ways to take messaging. This slide is the good, the bad, and the ugly, because we've got kind of more data related Vision Zero, that's talking about crashes and, very specifically how many people in this community, this is in Minneapolis, experience a life altering crash on the streets. So trying to bring it home local, and then also talking about the equity impact of that it's disproportionately affecting different communities. And then you've got the center message, which is pretty clear: give respect, get respect. And that makes it be succinct and memorable, versus the one on the right, which is really just trying to tap into like an eye-catching message and shaming, and it's only geared towards motorists. So that's kind of saying, hey, drivers, you guys are dummies, and this is what we think of what you do. And it's not really like an elevated conversation. It's kind of a low ball message. So thinking about who you are, thinking about like the criticism and where it's being placed and how you're using positive versus negative messaging is really important.
Mhm.
And then these are examples of more outreach focused, and this shows you how it's scaled to the activity. So the one on the left is about a specific corridor. Carly, you mentioned that you might have one that is just related to the corridor, and this would be geographically targeted, not necessarily user group target. Same with these yard signs. It's thinking about the actual place in which you put the message rather than what the content of the message is. And then the last one is showing how it's really important to be thinking about linking your messages. So, links, actual hyperlinks, the QR codes, it's a great way to have people be able to easily tap into a more robust message. So you can keep it really simple on the item that you have out in the field. And then this makes it easy to have an on-demand component. So people can tap into a survey, they might be able to watch a video, something that's a little bit more engaging and not just a static message. And then lastly, we're going to talk about scheduling, but when it comes to social media, there are some really great tools out there to help schedule social media. And I know that we talked in the first meeting about lowering the barrier to posting. And one of the things that can do that is using a scheduler, so you can go in, put all of your posts in for the next 2 weeks. You can do that in 1 or maybe 2 hours, one day, and you've got them scheduled to hit Tuesday at 11 a.m. when people go on their lunch break and they're ready to hit social media. And you don't have to log in on Tuesday at 11 a.m. to post it. So it really saves you time, and you can get the analytics from those posts to see what people are responding to. Um, these these three in particular have some pretty good free features, but it would take somebody feeling comfortable in using kind of a third party app, not just saying, hey, I know Facebook, I can post on Facebook. This takes a little bit more tech savvy capabilities. So we'd like to hear your feedback on if that's something that you'd be interested in, if people feel like they could take ownership over that.
Well, I think the simple answer to that question is yes. But then there's always the issue of, maintaining the rhythm once you get it started. So that would be something that Athens in Motion as a commission, along with Daniel, we would have to try to build into our structure as a body. I think with a little training, anybody could do it. It doesn't seem like it's rocket science or anything like that. But, we would have to kind of have, I would think, a monthly meeting talking about the messaging and what we're going to put out and where we're going to put it out and, who we're going to target, that sort of thing. So,
Well, hopefully, actually, that game plan will be coming out of this process. That you would be able to. We're not going to be providing the actual messages, as Henry mentioned. This is more of a framework rather than specific messages, but giving you schedule and how to think through the frequency of deploying those messages. And so, with the templates that you've got, and with the timing recommendations and best practices that we'll be providing, it should be pretty easy for you to just go ahead and once you approve of your messages, that will definitely take some upfront thinking, but it should be pretty easy for you to find that rhythm.
okay, so how do we develop the content? I mean, I look at a blank sheet of paper and I freeze up. How do you do it?
So I think that you have just posed a great question to actually bring us to this next question. So, because the content that you are creating has to tie back to what your goals are. So first you need to think through like what is your intent? What are you trying to accomplish with your message? And some of the other questions about, who's your audience, and that is going to help you figure out the content that you're putting in. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, so first question here is, what are the goals for outreach? And as you are marinating on this, I'll just kind of throw out a couple that we brainstormed ahead of time. Are you trying to reduce crash rates? Is that a goal? Are you
Absolutely.
trying to explain your projects to people? Are you trying to influence behavior? Are you trying to attract new users to the system? These are just examples of goals. Ideally, you would have just a handful, and then we could start parsing them out.
Well, I think you all, kind of got the essence there with your brainstormed list. It'd be good to have that kind of spelled out for us, and then we could possibly work on it as a commission. But I mean, yeah, we want to reduce crashes. Yeah, we want to explain projects. Yeah, we want to attract new users, and let people know about things that have just opened up and that sort of thing.
I think it's important too that a significant portion of how we start this is that the people of Athens-Clarke County understand, well, and the visitors understand, what is the Athens in Motion Commission.
Mm-hmm.
That we're not just, we're not part of the government. We're helping the government meet certain goals, around safety for pedestrians and cyclists and drivers. They're all impacted. Because as I said before, that I really don't think the county has much of the citizens of the county have much of an idea of what this group is. We just here in Winterville had the festival, or Marigold Festival, and there was a lot of people there, and there was a booth for the Firefly Trail, and I was there for a couple hours volunteering, and it was really interesting, the feedback that you were getting from people. Even for the Firefly Trail, a lot of the people there thought we were part of the government and were complaining about their taxes, and it was, it took a lot of explaining to say, oh, nope, not involved with that aspect. We're just in this particular case, we're just trying to create a trail for people to walk and bicycle on. So I think it's really important that the very first thing we do is get that who we are out, and then we can start messaging as to what we're trying to achieve.
I think that's a good point, Randy.
Yeah, I think that goes back to kind of what because I agree 100%. I think Sarah, your message earlier where you're like you can't do all of it, and so like yeah, in a perfect world we would do driver education, but I don't have a staff person who can support education right now. I don't, and so maybe that becomes a lower priority, like, and that's also, it's one of those things where as we move forward with Vision Zero, that is one of the goals of Vision Zero is education. And so we are, we're hopeful that the Mayor and Commission, give us our, designate a staff position for Vision Zero specialists, and then that's something where they can really start working towards implementing some of these things. But with this, it's kind of like if you start small, it's like here's Athens in motion. I think that's maybe one of the biggest things I've seen is people don't know about Athens in motion, and I mean I think Scott will say too, he gets people coming in there and he has a pamphlet to hand to them for the Greenway, but he doesn't have anything for Athens in Motion. So, and that's something that we definitely want to get going.
I
And
would add
so,
to that the education part. I can teach as many bicycle friendly driver classes as you want for free, but I don't have students. I don't know how you get people to want to take those classes. That's the hard part.
right. So, you know, I guess so the goals for the outreach, I think number one top goal is Athens in Motion. Who are we? What do we do? I think we've spent the last few years figuring that out as a commission, um, figuring out our roles and stuff.
So
From
let me,
there,
oh, go ahead.
oh, sorry, I would say a follow-up goal would be coordinating with already existing bike and pedestrian things in town. And so like if there's a bike walk month or like a safe routes to schools month, like focusing on those things that are already happening that we don't necessarily have to start from the ground up, but we can just help get the message out. So it's like build your viewer base, build your group of people who know about you, and then also start helping share stuff out and become that kind of network. And people say, oh, it's easy to get information regarding everything bike and ped related from Athens in Motion, so I'm going to follow them.
So I think what you said right there with building your base, to me, almost sounds like the ultimate goal. And explaining Athens in Motion um, supports that. I mean, so I think that you've made it clear that having people understand the purpose of Athens in Motion is really important, and that could be a goal. Um, but I think it's worthwhile to question: is that the ultimate goal, or is that making it easier to then carry out other activities? So is the fact that people understand Athens in Motion, is that important just because it frees you up to talk about what you actually want to talk about, which is, bike ped safety? Is it important because it gets people on board with um, supporting it? Or is it important just in and of itself?
I think it's both. Um, we obviously have a crisis in our community of people dying from crashes, and we need to work on that. I think Athens in Motion is kind of a focal point. It can be a focal point for a lot of the messaging. And so I guess I see two separate things. Athens in Motion as an entity needs to develop our brand, which we've talked about, and get people to understand, the who, what, when, where, why, and how. But then the work of Athens in Motion is something that is kind of bigger than that, and it's really about making every aspect of transportation in Athens-Clarke County safer, and safer for every user, not just your pedestrian, your bicyclist, but safer for drivers, safer for uh, bus patrons, safer for delivery vehicles, the whole thing. It's a system. So it's bigger than just the Athens in Motion Commission. We want to be the messenger.
I mean, so, but also honing in a little bit on that, I think a major goal of Athens in Motion is also transportation equity.
Mhm.
And I would say that we're currently, the thing that I hear most often is um, we need to do a better job of speaking to our communities of POC and reaching out to them, So I think rather than just building bike lanes where and saying, yeah, we did public input, like we really want to develop our ability to reach into these communities and say, what is it, like, what can we do to rebuild trust and, build the things that you need within our power, right? From a transportation standpoint. But so that's kind of like something that we've highlighted a lot within our department is trying to find that better connectivity and reaching out to those communities. And then also just the other thing is that we've heard a lot is there's obviously fixing old infrastructure but also building new infrastructure, and so it's really interesting. I've heard completely different opinions come from people on like what is better, like do we want subpar infrastructure in more places or perfect infrastructure in fewer places, but condensed in areas that are the highest need. And it's not really an answerable question, but those are kind of just from the infrastructure side of things. It's not necessarily Athens in Motion, it's just coming from my perspective, but is that kind of the detail you're looking for in these goals?
Yeah. I think that what I heard from you definitely developing the ability for community-based change and is huge. And then being able to guide capital improvements.
Mhm.
Um, so so far, what I've heard is I think building your brand is part of it. So making every aspect of transportation in Athens-Clarke County safer for every user, that's a great goal. The developing ability for community-based change, great goal. To better guide capital improvements, I think that's a great goal because that ties into directly having your mayor and commission understand what you do and the value that you bring to the process. Um, I think that if you wanted to tack on having an Athens in Motion uh, like unified message, you could, but I think that I want to kind of push you to think about other goals because that unified brand is hopefully coming out of this process and the ongoing efforts from this process. So if there's not any others jumping out at you, we can continue this conversation as we move through the next questions.
I think the only other thing I put in chat, but policy. We've really been doing a lot of work recently on policy like complete streets, and we've got some ordinance discussions coming up in the projects and policy group. Um, so that's another thing that we're kind of focusing on. So I don't know if that's something that it's good to get the message out there if like we're working on this, or if it's better to hit it from the like here's the things that we did, um, and
Both.
not to go beyond 3 items, but grants to just one from each committee almost, right? um,
I think 3 to 5 is
okay,
a sweet spot for goals.
yeah. So like getting help from our partners in our grants committee um, to really start getting this infrastructure money. And so I think Athens in Motion, a goal would be to help transportation get the infrastructure funding we need.
Mhm.
That probably goes into capital projects.
Yeah, or building the broader coalition.
Mhm.
Yeah. Carly, did you have anything to add? Randy, Scott?
No, again, I think, once, that message of who we are and what we're trying to achieve, the high level message is not, that's not something we need to be doing all the time, but just up front so that people know where to go when they're concerned about safety, transportation safety and transportation equity. I think those two that you had brought up, um, Daniel, about the equity aspect, and then of course Teresa with the safety. But really, that's when you boil it down to it, that's what we exist to do, and that's what the Athens in Motion, the master plan was all about. How do we just make it safer and more equitable for the citizens of this county to get around?
I think another aspect of this is getting the mayor and commission to understand us, because even though we are their child, they don't really know who we are or what we do. You hear some of them complaining or wondering about us in some of their meetings, and that's not good. They need to know who we are, what we're doing, how we are being of service to them in their decision making. I don't know how we go about getting that sort of message across.
Yeah.
Well, and
Oh, go ahead.
sorry, I was just going to say the other kind of catch with that is that the mayor commission does change. It's an it's an elected position, so some of the people who might be elected on, and I've noticed this pattern when new people come onto the commission, there's always that time of education of telling them again who you are, because you aren't necessarily the brainchild of the current commission. You're the brainchild of a previous one. And so making that plan of being able to, communicate that effectively so that they see that you're there to help, and not push against.
Absolutely. I think that is a great segue to the next question as well, which we did want to ask you all, and in the time that we have left, of when is it important to distinguish the difference between Athens-Clarke County and the commission? And that's something that can continue thinking about, but we would like to hear now if there were, any kind of specific types of messages that you said this is really important that it's coming from us as the commission.
I personally think it's very important that the public is able to distinguish between ACC and Athens in Motion, because we are a bunch of volunteers who are trying to move along a framework of the master plan that was put in place also by a joint effort between the existing government at the time and a user group that got went out and obtained citizen input and tried to come up with a big picture of how we make changes that are beneficial for everyone. But that for the commission, that the public sees it as we're just another one of you who happen to volunteer for a group that wants to see positive change, and we can be the person you can work through.
Mm-hmm.
So would you say that then when it's important is all the time?
Well,
All the time.
that's a complicated question, because we do work, in partnership with the government. We're we're really there as sort of a liaison between the
Yes.
public and the government, and the elected officials. We want to help get the word out. We want to help with people providing feedback so that the projects that end up getting funded are things that have popular support. That it's not just the government deciding how to spend your tax dollars. it's a little bit into the political weeds in that way, but hopefully not too much. And we'd like to avoid that.
Yeah, so a little bit of speaking about the commission as like a safe, not as this is not the messaging that I would necessarily use, but just to kind of explain it here is like the commission is a safe place to voice those opinions and to a sounding board.
Yeah, that's very important.
Anyone else have thoughts? We can move on. I know we're coming up on 5 o'clock, so we've got one more question that we did want to ask folks.
Oh, okay.
So-
Annual events. Well, we were supposed to do an open streets event, weren't we, Scott? Daniel? I don't know what's happening with that. So that's one thing. It's an open streets event.
I would say we could put a lot of effort into trying to get that, and I think that's a great goal to have. But is it the one that we want? This is more like promote comment on that. I'm assuming this is kind of more asking what existing events in town. Cool.
I mean, we've participated now twice in the Green Life Expo, which is put on by the Solid Waste Department. You know, now that we're no longer confined to our homes, hopefully that will continue. You know, we can set up tables and attend events. I mean, you know, we could do the Marigold Festival next year, or you know, any other thing like that where it's appropriate, as long as we've got somebody who's willing to, you know, go and sit for a couple hours. So.
Well, and I guess the question there is like, how many times do you like, are you going to do every special event like Twilight, you know, Athfest,
That
the
I don't know the answer to.
Latinx festival, like the farmers market every weekend, you know? I think it's helpful to look at it from which events are most relevant and or even just picking events kind of throughout the year that's not going to overextend your volunteers too.
Right.
Because what'll happen, which I've seen happen with Greenway Commission, is you've got one or two people who end up going to every single event, and everyone else, it just kind of becomes great, like background noise to like, oh yeah, they want some help, and they always want help, and I'm not gonna, you know, I did
Roll
that
with
once
that.
2 months ago.
I agree with that, Daniel. And, you know, it's a real concern. And, you know, I think a few strategic events is definitely better than, you know, signing up for every opportunity to put a table out there.
Absolutely. And I think that, ties into other goals as well. I mean, we mentioned a lot about students coming, and so like maybe student move-in is kind of, maybe there's a big push then, and that's kind of one part of the calendar year where there's a big push, and opportunities to tie in even with like holidays as well of, crafting a message around Halloween or, safe walking and biking and driving around St. Patrick's Day or any of those things. But yeah, Daniel, I think you're absolutely right. We don't want this to be a list of potential events. There's probably an event happening every day. We want this to be a prioritized list of where could the most people hear the most important message and it have the biggest impact, and how can we approach a calendar like that?
And to add to Henry's comments, this would not be saying you need to go in person. This is saying what events happen annually that provide an opportunity for messaging that you could just put a post out. Like he said, say it's student move in or it's Halloween, or maybe it's just daylight savings to say, like, hey, it's about to be dark 1 hour earlier. Make sure, check your lights. That kind of ongoing messaging so we can have just opportunities to plug in your ongoing messages.
Mhm. We've got a lot of work to do here.
And this is something that you can, we can work with you all to identify some that happen just every year.
That would be good.
And that way we can build out kind of the toolkit, which I'll let Henry finish this up.
Yeah, we wanted to just close by kind of sharing kind of what we see as the deliverable for this and kind of the things that, we've talked about. Man, there's so much that this could be, or so many things we could do and that you guys are working towards. But we do want to be able to provide something that's actually helpful. And so I think we're, like we talked about, hoping to have kind of those 3 to 5 overarching goals that this can all point to, and that can be our evaluation criteria of, are these messages meeting those goals? We're definitely going to kind of compile a lot of these things that we've been talking about into some of those kind of best tried and true practices that, maybe for all different kinds of events, these are the things that you want to focus on. And then also, from kind of just this work generally, we do want to share about special considerations of almost like a checklist, maybe for like every time an event is being posted on social media, think about accessibility, or every time you're tabling at an event, think about these types of things. And then kind of I guess maybe what I would see as the most helpful part of this is kind of a matrix for those messaging of thinking, if we have all of those medium types at the top, or all of those messages that we want to present on an axis, and then we have kind of all of those events on another axis, where do those lines start to get drawing of, okay, this event is happening, we want to reach this people, what type of medium do we use? And that's what I think would be most helpful when folks are spread thin. There is a lot going on. There's a million tables you could be tabling at. But being able to kind of follow that line through a matrix and kind of see where can you get the most bang for your buck. And I think that could really be helpful to kind of frame a lot of these ideas that are all kind of happening concurrently and could hopefully be overlapping, so that no one feels like it's just on them to get the word out. And then, last but not least, we want to just share resources. And I think, you're certainly not the only community that's thinking about all of these things. And there's a lot of really smart people out there who are a lot smarter even than Sarah and I and all of us on the call, who are thinking about these things and are coming up with kind of great ways to tackle some of these things and great ways to get messages across. And so we want to kind of compile some of those things, and definitely share resources about collaborating with other groups as well, and getting in on, what's the university doing, what's the police doing, what are these other groups doing. But that is kind of where we see a lot of our work moving forward. And you can go to the next steps slide as well. Yeah, we do want to hear about the toolkit as well. I know we're running short on time, but do want to hear feedback if you want to reach out to us. But we are hoping by the end of this month, so we're beginning of June, to be able to share a draft of kind of what that communications and outreach strategy would look like, and then also be wrapping up the branding and marketing templates, and then kind of by the middle of June, be hearing your feedback and getting comments back on that draft document, and then right around the corner, but towards the end of June, be able to finalize that communications and outreach strategy and be able to get started on a lot of this great work. Have the opportunity to, summer people are out and about, students are coming in the fall, and so we don't want to wait. We want to be able to get in on that. But yeah, we appreciate all of your feedback today, and for those of you who've stayed on later as well. Yeah, really appreciate your time, and please definitely email Daniel, email us as ideas come. I know it's a lot to just jump into this in the afternoon and wrap your head around everything and provide feedback. And so if something comes to you later, or we can send these slides out, and would love to hear from you as well. But Sarah, I don't know if it's anything else you wanted to add, but that was all I had.
Yeah. So this is the schedule that, we are proposing. If something works better for you all, we're happy to be flexible. And then I think for those who have a little bit more time, a couple more minutes, it would be great just to hear your thoughts on these proposed items. And as Henry said, the matrices would be kind of the bulk of it, in terms of being able to say, the difference between an event that is, like you said, the Green Life Expo, an event that somebody else is hosting, you're just tabling there. The magnitude of you know, a number of messages, types of messages, different types of mediums that you're using for that versus something like a bike rodeo that the commission is hosting itself, and it's like a big bike to work month event, and you are hosting it. So how your messaging would differ from one of those to the other versus just a project rollout, hey, this T-Splosh project is happening on this corridor. So the matrices are going to be kind of the bulk, but love to get your feedback on these.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm happy to stick around and talk some more about it.
Yeah. And technically, if you look at the timer on the meeting, we still have 3 more minutes because of the delays we had. So, with getting the stream going. I mean, that is a good point. It's kind of, project implementation and like public input and all that kind of stuff is stuff that the county really, we coordinate and do all of that. And it's super helpful to have Athens in Motion to kind of rely on to help us with that message. But it's not necessarily their number one thing that they do. So I think it's helpful to think about what is the number one thing that they're doing that I can, help or assist with, but really it's kind of in their hands versus just, being
Yeah.
something that I'm working on and getting their help with.
I mean, I think the biggest thing at the end of the day, to use the cliche, is, helping people understand that they need to be aware and careful when they're out moving from place to place, whether driving, walking, biking, transit.
But I have a question on the toolkit here. We have the goals 3 to 5 maximum. What is the granularity of those goals? What the expectation is? It something as broad as saying, we want to get our message out, we want to ensure equity in these projects, and we want to make sure people are safe, or for safety, here are the 3 things that we want to try to achieve this year, and those are our goals. But I'm a little cloudy there when
Yeah,
what we're
I
trying to.
agree, Randy.
I think goals, you as a commission, you have goals that is what brings you together as a commission, that you're working towards those goals. I think these would be kind of the goals of the messaging campaign, or the goals of the messaging strategy. And as far as the granularity, I think, people talk about, goals that are measurable. I think that's probably most important. That this would, oh, look at this, we've got them right here. I don't know if you got the like smart, yeah, so there's goals and objectives from the plan itself, and we're not trying
To
to.
work within that framework, because that's kind of who we are. So we've got all this stuff in there, and we should work off of that.
Right.
I
But
think the hope would be if that you can kind of work backwards with them, and say you make a social media post about something that you can go back and say this is achieving X goal, and we can measure that progress in some way. And so, yeah, I think keeping them in ways that every time a message goes out or an event happens, that you can look back and say that is helping us towards, that is helping us achieve this.
right.
But yeah, it's a really, really good question, because goals can mean a lot of different things for a lot of folks.
Well,
Yeah,
they're just
Randy,
different types of goals too. Like like the subcommittee has its own set of goals that fit within the framework of the Athens in Motion goals, and Athens in Motion fits within, the greater governmental goals of improving transportation access for everyone. So,
yeah, I would say that Randy, having the goal of just transportation equity, that would be too high level. But to bring it back to what the kind of the way that Daniel framed it in terms of um, like rebuilding trust, and kind of developing the ability to um, meaningfully engage communities of color. I think that is a great goal, and there's some actions that you can have within that. You don't need to get down to the level of something super specific that only has one action tied to it.
Mhm.
Okay.
All right, so we'll just kind of work with what we have here. This is one of my things from one of our tabling events.
Well, I think, Teresa, it's important to say, to look at those and to know that those are great goals for the commission as a whole and for the plan as a whole, but the goals for the actual communication strategy might be slightly different.
Right.
So I think that, yeah, we can look at those.
How do
and
we
can,
tie our communication strategy into supporting those goals?
yeah, and that can be a matrix that we put together. So we can, I think that figuring out the goals is going to be the most important thing, and we can take what we've heard from you today and put them together and then show how they line up with the Athens in Motion already adopted goals, and then send that to you. And that can be like the very first thing before, we showed this timeline. So well before June 2nd, I think that our task just in the next couple of days for Henry and I to do will be to say, this is what we heard from you in terms of goals. This is how it matches up with what you've already adopted. Is that accurate?
I think that sounds great.
Yeah.
Great. Well, your feedback today has been exceedingly helpful. Thank you for spending the hottest part of the day with us. And yeah, we will be following up with you in just a couple of days. That's all
Great.
we have.
Thank you, Sarah and Henry. Y'all are doing really great work for us, and we appreciate it. So, we're feeling better about our ability to get our messages out there by the day. All right, so Daniel, do we need to adjourn this meeting?
Yeah, if there's any other comments before we head out, I think we're right around a good time to end it. So anybody else have anything?
No?
Perfect.
All right,
All
this
right.
meeting is adjourned at 1:34 at whatever time it is right now. 5:17.
5:17.
5:17 p.m. Y'all be well, be safe. Watch out for those bicycles and pedestrians.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Thank
Bye.
you.